So welcome back guys to another Lazy Sunday Lore. As always, I'm your host, Smotown. And if you're not familiar with this series, this is just a casual playthrough series while I play, fail, and talk lore at the same time. Now you may notice we're in a different game this week. I just wanted a little bit of change of pace. And so we are in Blighttown in Dark Souls 1 Remastered. I am a sorcerer type character. You can see I'm level 31, so kind of appropriate for this kind of part in the game, maybe a little bit over leveled. But that's to do with the fact that I have absolutely no skill when it comes to sorcery or sorcerer players. I'm usually a heavy player. So we're just going to carry on with the playthrough while I talk about today's subjects, which are essentially a discussion on some of the Lord Souls that we find within the universe of Dark Souls. And by the Lord Souls, I mean generally the three. I think that the Dark Soul, as I'll discuss in the Q&A later, is a semi-unique soul, different from the fire-related souls. And so I'm actually going to try and get down there to pick up my souls. How did I get down there? And so the two souls that I'm going to talk about today are the two that I feel like didn't maybe get the story level that was planned for them, and that maybe in the end their story was a little bit rushed. And that is of course the Souls of Chaos and the Souls of Death. And I'm not sure why this dog is down here, but let's just get him. See, we're doing practically already. And so let's begin with the Soul of Chaos, since we are near the realm where we will find the Daughters of Chaos. And so it's been kind of a long accepted fact in the community anyway, I'm not necessarily saying this as canon, that there are 4 Lord Souls that were found are associated essentially with 4 different kind of aspects, which the Lords are also the governors of. And so, for example, the Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, is the Lord of Light, and therefore the soul has been attributed to be the Soul of Light. Likewise, we hear of Nito, First of the Dead, and therefore, again, the community in general has associated his soul with death. And finally, when we get to the Daughters of Chaos, and watch me try and find my way out of here, I have absolutely no clue, there we go. When we talk about the Daughters of Chaos and the Witch of Izalith, their soul has been attributed as Chaos, and so we have the 3 main Lord Souls, which were Light, Death, and then Chaos. And so, first thing to kind of note is it's her daughters that are of Chaos. That this is kind of a semantic point, nothing huge. Now, at first, especially when you kind of associate, which we all kind of mainly do, associate the Lord Soul of Chaos with the demons, it's easy to kind of see the Chaos Lord Soul as in the traditional sense of what we see Chaos, which is of course anarchy, uncontrollable violence and change. And that is the very extreme of what this soul represents. However, for me, when we talk about the Soul of Chaos, and therefore the soul of the Witch of Izalith, we are in fact not just thinking about this kind of extreme aspect of this soul, which is of course an important part, but if you Google the word chaos, it can also mean a lot of different things. One of the meanings being upheaval, and this is kind of what I associate the chaos soul with. I think of it as a soul of change, a soul of upheaval, and a soul of kind of progress in a kind of lot of ways, if you kind of want to spin it positively. Given the age that came before this kind of meshes quite well for me. The age that came before this was called the Age of Ancients. And the Age of Ancients is essentially typified by the dragons, grey crags, and the arch trees. But more importantly, it's a kind of time of nothing changing, of stagnation, of everything remaining the same, of kind of neutral, with no change or life or death or any kind of things that would constitute what we'd call change. And then came the advent of fire, and with it disparity. And what that means is disparity is that instead of this one kind of flat world where nothing changes and there's a set kind of way of things and there's only one species and there's only one land, disparity means that comes change, diversity, different people, different cultures, different powers, instead of just the grey power of the dragons. I know grey power is a bit of a simplification, but let's just say it's a neutral power. It's not death, it's not light, it's not up, it's not down, it's not dark. It is simply, it just is. It's just this neutral power that existed before the time of Lords, which brought disparity, and therefore a multitude of new problems, new creatures, and new powers. And this, for me, is very important in the way that I see the Witch of Izalith's soul. I feel like her soul represents the violent, changing nature that came with the kind of age of disparity, as the opening video kind of refers to it as. And I'm not sure why this guy's been triggered on me already, but let's just try my parry god skills. Unbelievable. Sick. You don't lose it, it's like riding a bike. Oh, that's not good. Okay, I need to back myself out of this terrible situation I got myself into. Those magic skills. I should always be a magic user. Flawless. Anyway. So yeah, a kind of important thing about the Age of Ancients is that it was this formless kind of time where nothing really changed, nothing really happened, and it wasn't really even an age that kind of had different cycles or things kind of developed. Like the Age of Light develops and the light gets less powerful with time. The Age of Ancients is just this time of nothing. And so with the fire came disparity, change, upheaval. And so I feel like the Witch of Izalith's soul isn't just of madness, of untrammeled violence, of demons, or what we kind of associate it with now, which is, to me, the very, very extremes of what it represents, and is a kind of result of the Witch of Izalith kind of messing with nature almost, and it kind of backfiring on her. Oh, damn it, I forgot the pyromancy. Let's go back up. Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that it is just chaos as in anarchy, as in, you know, the most commonly associated word chaos. Chaos is a force of change, a force of life, a force of violence in a lot of ways. But in general, it represents the change from this age that lacked disparity. And to some people, I might just be talking complete nonsense, and maybe thinking a little bit too deeply about it. But to me, being that she is part of the forces of kind of, let's say, gods, the pantheon, I call the three. I call Nito, Gwen's family, and the witches are part of the pantheon that represents this progress. And progress can be represented by chaos, and I think that is what the Chaos Soul in its most kind of positive representation is. It's progress, it's change, and there is no change sometimes without kind of violent upheaval. And I don't just mean like violence with swords and shields, I mean with molecules and physics changing. I just mean everything that is kind of subjected to violence. I'm just trying to work my way down here, sorry guys. Oh, that was lucky. Oh, that wasn't lucky, damn it. So as we work our way back down, as I always do in Blighttown, I overall think that then, therefore, the Witch of Chaos is a very important lord, but one that's kind of overlooked in Dark Souls, mainly because of what I understand to be time constraints when they were actually developing the game, in that they just didn't have time to flesh her out. Same with Izalith in general, and of course Nito as well didn't get quite finished as well. I'm just going to run past these guys in true Dark Souls fashion. A lot of my first playthrough of Dark Souls was just running through the game because I wasn't very good at it, and I'm not saying I'm very good now, but I like to think I'm slightly better, although I am letting these guys catch up to me here. But anyway, as we undertake the weirdest chase of all time, that is just how I reflect, of course, how I reflect on the Witch of Chaos, and I think that this kind of aspect of her would definitely have been built upon if she had been more fully developed. And so, what happens with her in the Bed of Chaos incident is that she tampers with the soul in attempting to relight the fire. And by doing this, what I kind of understand is that she basically, what she must do is kind of give more power to it from herself. And by overpowering it, she kind of overemphasizes the things that I just mentioned: upheaval, life, and wow, that's impressive. He's felt. Wow, these guys are annoying. So yeah, it's kind of this force for change, and if you overpower that, if it's uncontrolled change, then we get the kind of what I would call kind of mutations as kind of the demons are kind of uncontrolled, unrestrained life in its kind of most warped form. And so the soul of chaos can represent change, but it can also represent what people may more traditionally see it as this kind of anarchy, this madness that kind of comes with the soul. And that certainly does play into it later on. But for me, that is just the extreme version of it when it's messed with by the Witch of Izalith. And then in fact it just means upheaval, change, progress. Unfortunately though, this is warped to its very extremes, and we instead end up with this absolute mad outbreak of demons, which is just kind of like a cancer, this life that's never ending, never stopping, it doesn't stop growing or giving life, the bed of chaos. It's uncontrolled life, it's uncontrolled upheaval, which of course is the most simple kind of translation of chaos. And so that's kind of my very basic thoughts on the Witch of Izalith's powers. Wow. I don't know how this has become so ridiculous. I'm gonna die. Oh my god, no. Skill, everyone, I meant that. I've never found these bug guys to be annoying before, but they are very annoying when you're trying to play and talk at the same time. And now I'm all out of sorts, but it's over here. Good. We're just going to make it to this bonfire, and then I will begin to briefly talk about Nito, First of the Dead, before I jump into the Q&A. So likewise, Nito, as with the Witch of Izalith, wasn't as kind of built up as he probably would have been had they been given a little bit more of a timescale to build upon him. And again, as with the Witch of Izalith, there's the simplistic version that we kind of get thrown in our face in the game, is that he is the Lord of Death, and that's it. He's like the Hades. He governs the underworld and he watches over the dead, and that's all well and good. And in a world filled with undeath, you would have thought that Nito would play a very important part. Him and Gwyn are kind of all three of the Lord Souls, if you think about it, the three main ones, are the antithesis of the Dark. The Dark represents a tranquil, formless world. Tranquility meaning that there's not much chaos. And as my character does some kind of yoga here at the fire, then consider that, of course, Nito is affected by, by the Dark because of the undeath. It takes away his governing of the natural life cycle of things. And finally, of course, don't really need to explain why Lord Gwyn is on the opposite side of the Dark. So I separate the Dark Soul, and I think there's kind of a Q&A question on this that touches on this, so I'll kind of stop there, but it is a different soul than those three. And I'm going to I actually got the Rusted Ring, so I'm going to just put that on here. And we're just going to carry on and explore this area before facing one of the Daughters of Chaos, of course. And so... Oh, God, this bug. Oh my god, they're bugging me. Yeah, anyway. So Nito, Lord of the Dead, to me isn't just a Lord of Death. Of course, that is one of his primary things. But he is the Lord of Natural Death. Undeath has nothing to do with him. The kind of never-ending undead that are marked with the dark sign is the work of, and the weapon, essentially, of the Dark Soul. It, in fact, messes with his rule. He oversees natural death. He oversees, as I see it, the natural cycle of life and death. He's not just the Lord of Death. Of course, that is his kind of First of the Dead because he's the one that controls mortality. But that's how I see him. He's the Lord of Mortality, the natural cycle, the recycling of death and then new life. Because in the opening cinematic, and I was thinking about this recently, he unleashes a miasma of death and disease. And so, disease is a living force. Whether you associate disease with bacterial or viral infections, they are forms of life. And so kind of like Nurgle from... And he's not exactly like Nurgle, but Nurgle from Warhammer, he represents the cyclical nature of death and life, and death giving birth to new life. So he unleashes a miasma of death and disease. So he unleashes death, but disease is, in its own way, life. And he has power over this. So when we fight the most irritating enemies of all time in Dark Souls, the skeletons who regenerate, first of all, in the catacombs, that is not his doing. That is the work of the necromancers and Pinwheel, who have stolen and now misuse some of his lord power. But of course we do fight skeletons in his actual domain, especially when we fight him at the end and he has like essentially a guard that kind of keeps coming back unless you use divine weapons. So these undead are not undead. They aren't like us. They aren't stuck in a cycle of endless life. They are just puppets to Nito that he fills with life over and over and over again, like the necromancers do. They don't keep coming back to life after Nito's dead. They don't keep coming back to life after the necromancers died, because they are not undead. They are being given life by a power. The lords, the death soul, they are being given life by this death soul. They are puppets on a string, and as soon as that puppeteer is killed, they don't dance anymore. So we keep coming back to life because we are true undead, whereas Nito is essentially using his power of the natural cycle of natural mortality and manipulates already dead things to bring them back to life. They aren't undead. He is the Lord of Death and life, and he's using that power to control them. So he is very much separate from the Dark Soul, and I think he would have been a huge player in this game, maybe second only to Gwent if they had had time to develop him, and I'm sure that was the intention, because his opening cinematic he is very much focused on. I felt when I first played it, he was going to be one of the big bad guys, and then when I went through the catacombs, I enjoyed fighting him. It's really cool seeing this guy you saw in the cinematic. But then I did feel, a little bit like it was a bit of an anticlimax for what I assumed was going to be a huge character. So that's kind of my thoughts briefly on Nito and on specifically his soul, and specifically the soul of the Witch of Izalith. And have you noticed these leeches can jump over my soul arrows? They're really annoying. So that's my thought on those two Lord Souls, and with that kind of done, we'll move on to the Q&A. And so the first question that I have is from Two Big Birdie, and he says, a bit off topic, but what was your most memorable moment on your first playthrough of DS3? I'm aware I'm being poisoned. Mine is when you first entered Yorm's chamber and the cutscene triggered with Sigward's speech to his dear old friend. That's a great moment. My first playthrough, I didn't experience that because I messed up or I wasn't aware of his playthrough, because I essentially just played it blind and I missed it. So for me, there's a couple of moments, and I'll just kind of talk you through them now, because I actually really like talking about this kind of, personal preference thing. It's a nice topic to talk about. So for me, one of the moments, just from a Vista point of view, was, I think we can all agree, is when you leave the catacombs and you come onto Irithyll, a place you've heard quite a lot about. That's a magnificent scene with beautiful colours and lighting. That was a great moment. And then exploring that city was great. I had really good vibes there. And then revisiting Anor Londo that's been wrecked. I know probably annoyed a lot of people, but I loved it. But aside from that, the big kind of story, let's just say story moments. I'm actually going to make this person a Path of the Dragon Covenant member, because she's a dragon worshipper in my little headcanon. But I won't do it now. I'll just open this bonfire here. Oh my god. And so the kind of main kind of favourite part that's most memorable for me from the first playthrough was in general Aldrich's story, because he was built up really well and his story developed as you kind of explored further and further. So I loved hearing about him in the beginning cinematic. He was really interesting to me, and then I loved the thing that Hawkwood added about him being a cleric that ate people, because that's not really introduced in the cinematic, and so he was really piquing my interest then. And then finally, when you make it to Pont of Sullivan and you read that he was a member of the Oiled Royalty was fed to him, that really piqued my interest. I was like, this is a cool callback to the first game, and I wondered who it would be, and I assumed it wouldn't actually be anyone major. It'd be some kind of made up character from the old gods, or maybe a minor character like Flan that we never met. Not that Flan's minor, it's just that we never met him. But when the boss fight happened, and the first time I did it with Henri because I was helping her. It just blew my mind that it was Gwendolyn. I saw him, and yeah, I just wanted to get his soul so I could read the lore. And that was just a great culmination. I thought that was a great bit of storytelling. I know maybe the boss fight's not the best, but fighting him in Anor Londo, this regal room where you've had this epic knightly battle with these two great warriors in the first game, is kind of reduced to this slop where this horrible beast has dirtied it, defiled it, and he's devoured Gwendolyn, a major, not powerful like physically, but one of the biggest players in the whole world of Dark Souls, so easily cast aside by essentially what is a man with a great hunger who devoured a god. That is, for me, that was an amazing moment, and it was a great bit of drip feed storytelling where they built it up for me because I was keeping track of his lore as much as I could, reading every kind of bit of lore about him. And before I fought him, I played around PvP wise with Aldrich's Faithful because I was loving his lore even up to that point before I fought him, and I just thought his lore in that first kind of first playthrough, when you drip feed it and it's revealed, it's awesome. And that is, it's my first lore video for Dark Souls 3 was actually on Aldrich because I just loved this character so much I just had to immediately make a video on him. So that was great. And then another moment was in general, going to the Archdragon Archdragon Peak. I loved how you got there. I loved the atmosphere. I loved how it looked. I love these kind of mountain Eyries. I love Dragon Eyrie from Dark Souls 2, for example. I loved it. And I feel like dragon worship's always been a really peculiar and interesting part of the lore, but it's maybe not reached its full kind of lore potential. In Dark Souls 3, for me, the atmosphere and feeling of that place, they absolutely nailed it. Oh, should we summon? Let's summon. Let's go and defeat Quelaag with our friend. So yeah, I feel like they nailed Archdragon Peach in the way that it feels like this holy pilgrimage, like where you have a pilgrim to the mountain, you become a pilgrimage to the mountain and you become a monk and you dedicate yourself and you turn into these serpent men. I love it. I think that it nails the whole, even though there's not a dragon covenant in Dark Souls 3, it does it the best, in my opinion. Yo yo yo! Woohoo! We're talking some lore, bro. So let's go Raging Hulk and we'll just quickly defeat Quelaag so we can get back to the lore chat. But yeah, I thought it was done really, really well, the Archdragon Peak. I love the dragon lore in Dark Souls. I think dragons can be really basic and boring sometimes, but I feel like they absolutely nail it in Dark Souls, and they make it really mysterious, and they make dragons really omnipotent and mysterious, and it's incredible, absolutely incredible. And I think they nailed it the best in Dark Souls 3. That is a really great area with great lore and a great feeling to it in general. So that would be another memorable moment for me, and then of course culminates in a quality boss battle with the Nameless King, who not only has some phenomenal, mysterious, enigmatic lore, but his fight arena is blows my mind, and the fight itself is challenging but not unfair, and it's a masterpiece. I feel like FromSoftware absolutely outdid themselves with that area, and feel free to disagree with me. I really like Dark Souls 3 some people criticise the length of it or whatnot, but I love it. I think Dark Souls 3 is just an incredible game, and they nailed it, absolutely nailed it with that area. So yeah, you can tell I really like that area. And let's get another Phantom. Let's make this fight Mildred, and we'll just enjoy this fight because I don't really need to do anything if these two are going to do it for me. And so yeah, I hope that answers your question, Too Big Birdie. There's some great moments when I replayed it again, but those are the ones that stand out from my first playthrough. So as we traverse the light and Quelaag reveals herself, I'll read the next question. So it's from Rever St. Grey. Curious if you see the fire as a primordial counterpart to the light in the same way the abyss is the primordial counterpart to dark. So this is a difficult metaphysical question for me, but yes, I know I do see them both as kind of similar. But as I was kind of mentioning in my kind of opening lore piece, I don't think the dark soul behaves or follows the same rules as the three other souls. It is the antithesis. The opening tells us that it is in fact a unique soul, the dark soul, and so I think that the Abyss is kind of a power of the dark. The three Lord Souls have their own powers. They have obvious, omnipotent, overt powers. Gwyn has his mighty lightning bolts, the witch has fire and life, and Nito has death. Oh, they've changed the graphics, that's cool. Yeah, Nito has death. So, and again, Nito's a very powerful warrior as well. He's got a great sword, and he wastes the dragon, absolutely wastes them. Oh, my little friend's dead, that's a shame. So yeah, I feel like that is a kind of a different power to me. And it's good that Mildred's really helping me here. But I see them as slightly different, so I'll explain why. The powers of the Lord Souls, I'm trying to get my words right here. Powers of the Lord Souls are obvious, and I just see the Abyss as a kind of formation or power of the dark. It has insidious powers. The Abyss, that kind of appears over time and wastes away the lands of light. The fire is a metaphysical representation, and oh, she's trapped me. Oh, thank you, Mildred. Saved my life there. So as Quelaag dies, I'll just kind of read my notes and kind of get my thoughts straight. So I think that the Dark Soul is essentially unique in the way that it behaves. So I don't think it's fair to compare Fire and Abyss. And I think the Fire is more complex than the Abyss is. I think the Abyss is the physical manifestation of the Dark, and it's the physical being of the Dark. I think the Fire is the power behind light, death, and chaos or progress. Light is the fire in a way is a representation of the power level of the fire. So light doesn't power fire; it's the other way around. The fire is in fact what is powering the light. And what I mean by this is that the fire, while yes, of course, it physically takes form, I feel like it's quite. You're not giving the full detail by just saying that the fire is the fires that you see in the game. The fire is this force, like the dark is a force. The fire for me is more the opposite of dark than light is. While the power of the fire and the flame dies, the power of the dark grows. Gwyn fears the fading of the fire, not the fading of the light. The fading of the light is a symptom of the fading of the fire. So I feel like the fire is this metaphysical force that first of all gave disparity in the Age of Ancients, and is what powers the ancient Lord Souls. Whereas the Abyss is kind of more simple kind of form of the dark. So I'd see Flame more as an opposite of the dark, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I feel like the Flame is just the representation of the Age of Light, and it's this metaphysical power that gave disparity. It's like the Big Bang. Say like the Big Bang happened, and then the Big Bang was like a force that then over time would fade, which it does, of course. There's many physicists who postulate the fact that in time the universe will stop expanding, stop growing, and then in fact begin to give way to entropy, and eventually we'll just have this formless universe of dark, the Age of Dark. And I kind of think that's where these ideas come from. I'm really stopping here because I'm really trying to dig in to my brain here to kind of verbalize what I mean. So I think the flame is what the Big Bang is to our universe, and it's energy, it's upheaval, it's death, it's light, it's chaos. It's those three Lord Souls epitomized. And when that fades, the dark will grow, and the Age of Dark will come in our universe much as it does. And I'm sorry, I know it's a depressing thought to think of all the stars going out. But yeah, that is it. I think that the flame is less than the physical things you see here. Now, of course, there is physical fire. But think more of fire as a metaphysical power in the universe that gives the lords and their souls the power. So, yeah, I know that was a bit kind of rambly, River St. Grey, but to surmise, the flame is a universal metaphysical power rather than it being just a physical flame. Okay, so that's kind of the Q&A that I've got time for this week. I still have another couple, and I'm sorry, I know there's a couple of guys that have been waiting a couple of weeks. But given that I'm trying to keep these videos around about half an hour, if I start another one, I'll be rambling for another 10 minutes. So I'm just going to meet the fair lady here and we'll end the video. So as just a kind of finale, while I speak to our little egg friend here, I am still working on this large video that I've mentioned in my community tab, my Twitter, and in my last video. And it will take a bit of time. I think it's going to be the end. I'm aiming for Friday next week. But this is a large undertaking, so I cannot promise that, of course. I want to take my time on this. This could be one of my biggest pieces for Dark Souls, going into the new release of Sekiro when everyone's focus will probably change. Mine certainly won't always been doing Dark Souls, but while the interest is still in Dark Souls, I am going to be wanting to polish out this really polished piece. So please forgive me as I take a little bit of time. And I'm just going to join this Covenant for now, because I really like this Covenant, really one of my favourites. And yeah, just a final lore point, talking about the power of chaos and how it is untrammeled life now because it's been warped, and that essentially it does represent life. Consider the fair lady and her eggs. She is giving out these enormous amount of eggs that just can't go anywhere. Her egg bearers take the eggs for her. She is a representation of someone who's been overburdened with too much life. That is what happens with the Chaos Soul when it gets warped by the bed of chaos. It goes from meaning change, life, and upheaval to meaning uncontrollable life. So that's my video now. A bit off topic there at the end. Hope you liked this Sunday lore. I know it's Dark Souls. I might do Dark Souls again next week, depending where I am with my playthrough. So if you like this content, please subscribe and give it a like. Stay tuned for my big piece. I will start teasing it soon when I've recorded the audio. And thanks for watching, guys. Your support is much appreciated. Bye.